Hello everyone, I'm Ravi Verma, co-founder and CTO of IMESH. In our last session, we discussed about deploying the application into cluster and we discussed about services. Like we discussed about what all services, what is the use of each service, and few limitations we discussed around those services. So we'll be continuing from there, and then today we'll be seeing how we can kind of like make it more configurable services, and we can have more control, and how can we solve few of the limitations which is already there in service. Like for example, one thing we saw is a load balancer service. In that case, it is linked to few of the pods, set of pods basically, and if we need to expose multiple services outside, and if we go to take that path, so each set of pods will create its own load balancer, and which adds to the cost. There are couple of solutions to that to handle that one. One way is Ingress. So we'll be discussing today the Ingress part of it. Other solutions we can discuss in future, but today we'll be focusing on the Ingress. So what is Ingress and what is Ingress controller we'll be seeing. So Ingress is not a service, but basically it is a object or a resource specifically designed for HTTP and HTTPS. So it allows the traffic to flow from outside cluster to inside the cluster, but very specifically meant for HTTP on HTTPS request. It can provide additional features like load balancing, SSL termination, virtual name, virtual hosting, that name-based virtual hosting can be done. So that is Ingress basically. So it allows external traffic to enter into internal traffic by some means and some control. Now comes to the Ingress controller. Ingress controller is needed. So basically, Ingress needs Ingress controller to make it work. So Ingress as such by itself cannot work, cannot achieve something. Ingress controller is needed to make it the way we want, like the way configuration. So Ingress controller takes the Ingress resource and configures our resources, or basically the access path accordingly. So we'll be seeing, so today we'll be using Nginx based Ingress controller. We'll be deploying it in our Azure cluster, and we'll try to access it from the outside. So that demo we'll do today. So what I did, I copied from our last session these two services, like one service and one deployment, so that we need to write it again. We'll deploy it first, and then we'll create our new Nginx based Ingress controller. Nginx based Ingress controller will install, and then we'll use Ingress to control our traffic. So let's go ahead and see how it can be done. So let me first deploy these two objects, and then we'll be starting with writing Nginx, installing and then using the Nginx Ingress. So first this one is same thing, whatever we have used it, I just deploy it. The service, it is connected to that pod. So we'll be creating two replicas, so two pods will be created, and then we'll be connecting with the service to the same port. So the first thing we need to do. So let's go ahead and do it. So first we'll see there is nothing inside that. In default namespace, kubectl get pods. We don't have anything. Let's deploy. So let's deploy deployment first, and then we'll deploy service. Service is basically, it's a cluster IP service. That is done. As I mentioned, like Ingress directly, it will not work without Ingress controller. So we need to install Ingress controller. So we'll be installing today Nginx Ingress controller. So for that, we can go to this path. kubernetes.github.io ingress nginx deploy, and we can follow to one of them. So currently I'll be deploying with Azure, so we can go to directly Azure, and to deploy just copy. So this is one of the way directly installing through the manifest file, but we have ham chart and also, but today we'll be following only this direct applying the configuration. So it creates namespace, it install or required dependencies, and it 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 starts the ingress controller as well. Okay, so meanwhile it is creating, what we can do, we can write ingress. So let's create one ingress resource. So I'll name it nginx ingress.yaml. No need to worry about the syntax and all the configurations. That if it is required, we can discuss in future sessions, but wherever it is very much required today, I'll explain that part. So let's write it. A version working.ktest.io. Client will be using ingress and metadata. Name, any name we can give. Let's give demo app IMESH.ti HTTP. We need to apply annotations for URL rewriting basically, so that will add it. So I'll not apply it. We'll see why it is needed in some time. So first go with without annotations any. Ingress class name. As we are using Nginx controller, so we need to give this which ingress controller we are using. So we'll use it Nginx. Then we need to apply rules. HTTP. Then we need to specify paths, like which path it is taking. And so one of the problem it is solving, like using only one Nginx controller, we can now route the traffic to different microservices. No need to have a load balancer for each and every or node port for each and every set of services or set of pods. So we can control using only one load balancer, which is already, which will be created when we install Nginx controller. It creates a load balancer externally, and it is managed by Nginx controller. Paths, let's add it. Then we have paths. So I'm just giving a root for now. We'll see, like few configurations will be changing, and then we'll be working on that area. So let's start with directly path root. Path type prefix backend. So here we specify which service if we get the traffic to root directly slash where that traffic need to be redirected. So this path we need to specify that into service, like which service it need to redirect that. So we need to mention service. We need to give name of the service. So service, we want to route this traffic, route traffic to this service, and this is managing internally two pods. So this service name we need to give. Let's add it. And we need to specify port, on which port that particular service is listening, so that it can route the traffic to the particular port. So number 80. So we can verify it is listening on port 80. That's why we need to give the same port here, and then we can deploy. So let's see if Ingress has already been deployed. Yeah, that is done. We can verify it by seeing kubectl get all this Ingress Nginx namespace. Sorry, spelling mistake. So we can see here it is having ports, services, and all. So one thing is to access it from the outside, we'll be needing public IP, which we can get it from service, which is created when we installed Nginx Ingress controller. So let's get it IP. So we have IP. This is external IP. This we can use it to access it from the outside. We'll see in some time. So before that, let's deploy Ingress, which we just created, so that the linking can be created. kubectl Nginx Ingress. Sorry. Something is wrong, maybe some spelling mistake. Networking dot kts.io /v1 kind. Nginx rules HTTP paths. Ingress environment. So this 1 minute. Let me just re-verify it. Okay, 1 minute. Let me check. Ingress strict recording error. Unknown field spec rules HTTP paths backend service. Sorry, yeah, spelling mistake. Service. Supply again. Yeah, so it's created. We can get it like what all the ingresses are installed. So for that we can get kubectl get ing. By default, all those things are we are installing in default namespace. So we'll be able to vary it. So here it is created Nginx. We have now we should be able to access it from the outside using this IP. So let's go ahead and try to access. Yeah, done. So we installed Nginx Ingress controller. We created Ingress resource, and that Ingress we connected to our backend service, which is running on port 80, and that internally forwarded the request to our running pods. So that way we installed and we configured our web access from the outside. So that we configured. That's it for this session. If any question at any time, please contact us at contact@imesh.ai. Thank you.